Hi everyone, I'm Mia Brazine, the Assistant District Manager of Community Board 11 here in East Harlem. The Community Board is a government agency that advocates for the community of East Harlem, which extends from the north side of 96th Street up to 142nd Street and from 5th Avenue over to the river. Today we're going to be discussing the issue of synthetic drugs within our community, known as K2 or Spice. I'm joined here by Thais Mitchell, Diana Ayala, and Brody Enoch, who will be now introducing themselves and telling us about their work that they do.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thais Mitchell. I work for Addicts Rehabilitation Center. I'm the Senior Vice President of Clinical Services. Addicts Rehabilitation Center is located in Harlem on 128th Street and Park Avenue, and we also have another building on 128th Street and Madison Avenue.
And I am Diana Ayala, Deputy Chief of Staff for City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito. Our office is located at 105 East 116th Street in East Harlem between Lexington and Park Avenue. And this is an issue that we have been tackling for the last few years.
And my name is Brody Enoch. I'm a longtime member of Community Board 11. I'm also Addicts Rehabilitation Center is near and dear to my heart. The speaker is near and dear to my heart. And East Harlem is near and dear to my heart. And I've been a community advocate and organizer for many, many years.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. I'm really excited for this conversation. So first, can you tell me a little bit about when did this issue with synthetic drugs and K2 first start in East Harlem?
Well, I know as far as K2 itself, it began in 2008. And it began because it was, it was like a purporia, incest. So it was inside the stores, just, and everyone was selling it, and it was marked as not for human consumption. Okay. However, teenagers and other people like to do experiments, and they found out that because the synthetic drug is sprayed with some type of chemical compound, like similar to THC, once they smelled it and it smelled very similar to marijuana, they began to smoke it, and then it became a rampage.
And also one of the things that's interesting is that we weren't really sure what they were doing at first. I mean, you saw these people that were using the drug, and at first I thought they were like on acid or some other psychotropic drug, and then when I heard K2, I had no idea what they were talking about, And then they say, well, they're smoking incense. And I said, well, that really doesn't make any sense. How the heck are you smoking an incense?
Exactly.
But like you said, from 2008 down, now all these years later, we're seeing the effect of it,
Yeah, I mean, we've been out on the street kind of surveying community residents about, when K2 kind of started to become popular. So it has been here for quite a few years. I think that what happened was that at some point legislators kind of caught on to the fact that this was a brand that was being sold over the counter at a lot of our local bodegas and smoke shops, and then they kind of started figuring out ways to make it illegal. And at that point, I think there was a decline in sale and use, and then maybe about a year and a half ago, it kind of became popular again. I believe that, from the information that we get from both, residents and the law enforcement, the reason that it became popular again was because the manufacturers then started playing with the chemicals, and, they continue to stay a step ahead of legislators, so that if they ban, 2-3 chemicals, they come up with a replacement immediately. So it's been, quite a challenge to stay on top of.
And it's much more affordable than marijuana, right? I guess maybe we should take a step back. And so synthetic marijuana is not marijuana, correct?
No.
Correct.
It is not.
Okay, so what is it? How would you describe it?
Describe K2? K2 is it's a mixture of like a plant, a spice, and some type of herbs, right? And it looks similar to like potpourri. And because they spray it with a chemical compound very similar to marijuana, but it comes in like a slippery, like silver type of bag. So, and because it's incest, they say spice, there's like different names and so forth. That's why they've been getting away with it. Also, the reason why it's been so rampant is because when you get tested, like a toxicology, it's not coming up in your urinalysis unless we send it to the lab and you're testing specifically for K2 since it's a synthetic drug.
Yeah, it's purely man-made. It's purely man-made. You have a few individuals that are playing around with compounds, chemicals that, we have no idea, what kind of, effect will have on the body. I speak to young people. I think that in East Harlem, we've seen that, when we spoke to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, we realized that, it hadn't become yet a huge issue in New York City because it's only sold in small pockets, throughout the city. East Harlem being one of those pockets, the Lower East Side being another. And they think that they attribute it, primarily to the fact that we have an oversaturation of homeless shelters. And, most of the people that do smoke synthetic marijuana unfortunately come from the shelter system or are street homeless individuals with mental health issues already. So now you compound, medications or, mental health, mental illness with, substances that we can't even identify. And it makes, for a pretty sick individual.
And just to piggyback on her, it's easy accessible and the cost. So normally, typically, marijuana may run like $5, $10 a bag, depending on. But the K2, because it was in the bodegas, the grocery stores, and the smoke stops, it was like $2, $3 because it was incest.
For 5 grams, which is pretty significant because it means that you can smoke a lot longer and it's pretty potent.
Correct.
But I think that we need to. What I think we've been trying to argue is that we need to stop calling it synthetic marijuana because I think that that's kind of where a lot of the confusion has come from. Is that people from what and again, this is based on conversations that I'm having with individuals that live in the community or have either come in contact with somebody that smokes it or has smoked it in the past, is that they really do. There was a misconception that this was a more natural form of marijuana, and in actuality, this is more like smoking PCP. The effects, that a person can get can range from, super natural strength, and aggressive behavior, vomiting. We've had cases where, specifically on 125th Street, where we have, and Lexington Avenue, we have larger concentrations of bodegas that were selling synthetic, where people have stripped down and, just walked the streets, with no clothing on because they had no idea where they were, and just the rush of it was so powerful that they couldn't even explain, what they were feeling. It was unlike anything that I had ever felt, on any other type of drug. So it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. I know, Brody can speak to, I know that he's witnessed a few instances of people under the influence. So you can either be super, super aggressive, or you can be kind of,
there's a lot of effects: agitation, heart palpitation, and definitely more of the mental health, as far as like the hallucinations, the delusions, the paranoia. And I have witnessed some people in the community that had seizures and the vomiting, like you said, and the paranoia and being delusional and different type of hallucinations where they needed to go to the hospital and they were hospitalized because of the K2.
I hope that's not somebody who needs help. Actually, it is. Sorry about that. I thought I turned it off. But anyway, as I was about to say, when you were talking about the effects of the drug, the crazy part about it is that it's considered, they have this thing when they use it, it's called like the zombie walk. And it's just almost as if a person has no idea where they are, what they're doing, where they're going, and they're just walking. But I have a quick story. A friend of mine said that she used K2 and was walking from 125th and Lexington west and having a conversation with a good friend of hers. And when she got by the water on the west side, she stopped and realized her friend wasn't there. And then it bothered her because she didn't realize, she was trying to figure out how long ago her friend had left her. Was it a block away, 2 blocks away, 3 blocks away? So she called him and she asked him why had he left her, and he said, I haven't seen you in 3 days. So this woman was thinking that she was walking and talking with someone who wasn't even there. So it, and it's the, in the past, and I'm not if you know my history, you know I never advocate for the use of any drugs. This drug is a killer. You do not see people are just completely out of their minds. There is no rational conversation with the person who is smoking K2. There is no rational behavior from a person smoking K2. It is one of the most devastating drugs that's out there, and it is here in East Harlem. It is throughout, and in the Lower East Side and parts of Harlem, but it's also throughout the country. When I've spoken with people who said that the South, in places like North Carolina and South Carolina and in Tennessee, this thing is running rampant. And you're right, it is. There are a lot of people who are using it who who may be in the shelter system, but is it because they're in the shelter system and using it, or did they wind up there because they're using it?
Correct.
You know what I mean? What came first? Are they getting high and then just falling through the cracks and now becoming part of the system?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that when you speak about 125th Street in specific, I think that a lot of the local bodegas just started marketing to the population that they saw the most, right? So we saw not only an increase in the sale of synthetic marijuana, but also a sale of like 50-cent beers, loose cigarettes. But I think, what happened was that there was no one else to sell to. So they started to kind of, market to a specific population.
Right. It seems like this drug is almost the perfect storm in East Harlem. Like what you were saying, it doesn't show up in drug tests. So if you're on parole, it won't show up. It's affordable, so if you're a lower income, you can still get it. We have a high concentration of homeless shelters, especially right around 125th and Lex. So it's almost like all the factors that you would need, and the mental health issues that go along with that too, are so very present in our community, especially at 125th and Lex, which seems to be the epicenter of this problem. What do you think have been the effects of all of this on the East Harlem community? The businesses, the individuals, people coming to visit the community from outside our neighborhood?
We have been, for the last year and a half, the Speaker's Office has been engaging in meetings with stakeholders that either, have a business in the 125th Street, the vicinity of 125th Street area, or are somehow affected either because they're a resident or a community-based organization, to try to figure out, a strategy to better deal with that, that part of the community. And there's no strategy. We just, trying to, learn from their experiences. But they're not happy. They're not happy. A lot of businesses have shut down. Some businesses have threatened to leave. We had a brand new IHOP that came in, and immediately, there was a Daily News, I think, article where patrons of the restaurant were complaining that there was someone, like defecating right in front of the window. You can stand there any day. I spent a lot of time in that area, and people are outright smoking the synthetic. They have no regard for the law or for anyone, that's commuting or, that lives in that area. And there's public urination issues because they're so high that they don't have any idea of where they are and what they're doing. So we have been getting complaints from the businesses and from the residents about, the quality of life. I know McDonald's had to hire security. Because they can no longer control the crowds. And they come in there, they're sick, because if you smoke enough of it, you make yourself physically sick.
Right.
I guess from one perspective, I look at the bodegas, and I look at the amount and the consumption because of the rampage and because of the high usage. And I looked at and I viewed it as more of a revenue because they kept continuing to sell it. From that perspective, as far as the community and the bodegas, it's like, hey, if I can make money, why not? Right. Not really looking at the effects so much of, unless the person was physically there, in front of their store, like the McDonald's, where there's a lot of, clientele and a lot of people that kind of linger around there. I mean, as far as the community, we do have a lot of treatment programs, but oftentimes clients don't want to come into treatment. So, or sometimes they may not know. So that's why they hang around the McDonald's and, and that's why I know ARC has recently begun massive recruitment, where we're going actually out in the community looking for those clients who need help, and reminding them of different options as well as our program and what our program has to offer.
But it is also our belief, and it's something that we're studying now, is that some of the individuals that are getting high in that corridor are also coming from treatment already. They're coming from a methadone clinic, which kind of exacerbates the symptoms, right? Because if you're already taking medication to treat one thing and then you're smoking, and the reason they're smoking it is because it doesn't show up on drug tests, right? The city can only test for so many things, and unfortunately there are hundreds and hundreds of chemicals that are used in the manufacturing of this product. There are over 100 variations of synthetic. So not one is, the same as the other.
Do you know what's interesting though? And you're right. There's no blueprint for dealing with this. Excuse me, but we have had to deal with this issue before in the past. It seems as if every drug comes through our community and destroys part of it, and really nothing gets done on a large level until it starts affecting other communities. The crack epidemic was horrible, and we know how devastating it was in the places where we are. But it didn't become a major nationwide issue until it started affecting some other types of people. And I think it's the same thing with this drug, that eventually, unless there's something done on a higher level, because you see, we're talking about the people who are using it.
That's right.
What about these stores that are selling it? And I know there are hundreds of variations of this chemical, but you just disallow them from selling it. You close their, if that store, if these bodegas were selling heroin, they'd be closed in a second.
So what is the legal? Is it illegal to sell K2?
Yes.
It
It is
illegal to
illegal.
sell it.
Definitely illegal
It
to
is
sell
illegal
it.
to sell it, and it is illegal to possess it.
Okay.
But
It's a
it's
felony.
it's not a felony.
Nope.
It's illegal in the form of a citation.
Right.
Okay.
The citation,
Which is what's a
which is
citation?
equivalent of a speeding
misdemeanor?
ticket.
Like a
Okay.
misdemeanor?
Now, the stores know that they're not allowed to sell it. They continue to sell it because it's a slap on the wrist. The problem is that legislating it has become very difficult because you have to prove that this is a drug, and it's continuously changing. So, which is
Right.
why I mentioned that they continue to stay a step ahead of of the law. I know that Senator Schumer has asked the Drug Enforcement Agency to ban 200 or so chemicals used in the production of K2. I think this happened in October of last year. So it is in the works. And I know last month in April we had a serious case of an emergency actually. On 125th Street, we had between the week of April 7th to April 15th, 120 individuals in the city that were hospitalized in the emergency room because they became ill after having smoked K2. So the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene issued a warning so that people knew that this was not something that they should be ingesting. But they also went out, through East Harlem, and they gave out commissioner's orders to 32 stores that were selling or that they suspected were selling. 6 of those bodegas outright were selling it over the counter. I would imagine that they didn't realize that they were selling something that was, illegal. But because of the commissioner's order, when the Department of Health comes back, and at some point they will come back, it would become a misdemeanor if you are, caught selling the product.
If the stores are caught
If the
selling
stores
it.
are caught selling
So what
it.
happens if I'm possessing it? It's a citation. It's like spitting on the sidewalk.
You get a
So-
ticket. You go and you pay. Either you pay for it or you fight it. And most people fight it because again you have to prove that it's a drug,
Right.
and there's nothing that that can argue that it is. It says on the bag, it's not for human consumption. It's
Correct.
potpourri.
Correct.
So how do you dispute that? Is why it's become so tricky. So I think that our approach has been that while we allow the legislators to kind of figure out a more long-term solution, is that we created a more grassroots kind of localized public awareness campaign where we would then bring out the information to, I know I attend resident association meetings, community board meetings, You know, I speak to after-school programs, to other elected officials about, you know, the dangers of smoking K2, because I think that a lot of, you know, I know that, you know, a lot of the older women that I know, their kids are bringing it, their grandkids are bringing it home, and they're telling them, Grandma, this is something that's, you know, this is a natural form of marijuana.
Correct.
So they don't know. They don't know the dangers of smoking it, and I think that the public awareness, you know, campaign will help kind of, you know, at least better inform parents and better inform, you know, constituents about the dangers of smoking while we figure out a more long term.
And treatment is really important as well.
Yeah.
I know, there, especially in East Harlem, there's been a kind of a backlash that there are too many treatment centers. And just at the time when people are complaining about the amount of treatment centers or the types of treatment centers, it's now the time that we need this particular treatment center to deal with this particular, you know, this particular drug. And one other thing I did want to mention is that it seems as if this is one effort or one campaign that the community should get behind. You know, we have these stores selling, and if we can legislate them out to stop selling, community groups should be standing in front of these stores and raising their voices saying, we no longer need you in our community. We don't want you here. We don't want you doing this here. You know, we have to take back our streets. We have to take back our community. We have to take back our stores. We have to take back and put our foot down and to who is doing this stuff. You know, we can blame the sick and suffering who are using it, but my goodness, we really have to go after those. And you're absolutely right, Diana, that it's constantly changing, but we know who's doing what. We see who's doing what. We should be in front of these establishments telling them enough is enough. You know, we will not shop there. We will not patronize. We will not give you our businesses. We will not spend our money in your establishments. You know.
So if you or someone that you know is smoking K2 spice, what would you recommend? Are there specific treatment places that they can go to? What should they do?
Well, I know ARC, which is Addicts Rehabilitation Center, which is located 2015 Addison Avenue, and that's the corner of 128th and Madison. Also, we have another facility, 1881 Park Avenue, the corner of 128th Street and Park. It's an intensive residential treatment program. If anyone is smoking K2 and need assistance or help, we accept you with open arms. You can come in or you can call. The number is 212-427-1342. You can do a screening, you can ask some questions, you can get additional information, and we will, as we say, our acronyms is help, guide, and assist. So any client that comes in or anyone that needs help or assistance, we will assist you. You can come into that program.
Without a doubt. And also, if you if you need any information about, you know, how you can help in the community to help stop this, you can reach out to the speaker's office. You know, I bug Diana all the time about issues, and I think she stopped taking my calls, but I'm not sure. You know, occasionally she'll pick up. And the community board, you know, the work that you do at the community board, there are a lot of questions and a lot of issues out there that we may not think of, we may not be thinking of now. You know, there may be an issue, you know, people who smoke this stuff can be violent in the home. Maybe there's someone out there who has a child or a loved one who's smoking this stuff and then acting crazy or being violent in the home. You know, there are repercussions to doing this. Reach out to someone, get help if you need help. Get help for someone else if you need help. One of the things that we do have in East Harlem are many services to help people.
I think that was mostly what mostly called, you know, my attention when we first learned of the K2, because again, we started a working group to help mitigate some of the conditions on 125th Street and Lexington Avenue with the, you know, oversaturation of programs, but that's a separate discussion. That, you know, so many people were smoking it and we had no idea what it was. And I find that a lot of people don't know what it is. When I go out, I mean, we asked the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to create a flyer, which, you know, I'm sorry I didn't bring today, but it's a beautiful flyer, and, you know, I think that it captures, you know, the attention of folks. We try to take it everywhere so that people kind of, you know, can post it. But, you know, it's the kids, you know, anybody's child can walk into a bodega right now and buy this.
Right.
You know, there's no law that prohibits anybody's child from walking into a store and buying
Right.
this
You don't have
product.
to be 18 to buy
You don't
it.
have to be 18. And that's kind of what, you know, was a wake-up call for me. I'm like, wow, what is this, you know?
really
And I remember we had a
epidemic.
meeting on 126th Street. We had a walking tour with the group, and we were standing on 126th Street, and this woman approached us, and there was a representative there from NYPD, and she said, you know, they're selling synthetic marijuana at, you know, in the bodega, and they said, you know, there's really nothing that we can do. And it's really, you know, it's a shame because law enforcement really, you know, their hands are kind of tied
Right.
as well. But I think that, you know, that is, you know, most people would argue that we don't really have enough quantifiable data to suggest that younger children are smoking this. But if you look at the marketing and the packaging, it's specifically, you know, marketing to the younger population. You have, you know, your Green Giant, and you have all of these cartoon characters, you know, on the packaging. And it would appear to me as a parent that is very much, you know, so attractive to the younger crowd. And I've had conversations with the younger kids, you know, 17, 18-year-olds that live in the community, and many of them have friends that are smoking it. And I get a lot of calls from after-school providers, and they're like, you know, I understand that you guys, you know, have been doing a lot of work on K2, and it seems to be a conversation that continues to come up with, you know, amongst our teens. Can you come and talk to that?
Wow. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. We're almost out of time, so we have to wrap up. If you or anyone you know is smoking K2, please reach out to the Community Board office if you have questions about that. Our number is 212-831-8929, or Melissa Mark Viverito, the City Council Speaker's Office, Addicts Rehabilitation Center. Please reach out. And also, I would like to remind you that CB11 CDTV is regular programming on MNN, so make sure that you're watching. And thank you again so much. Thank you for everyone for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.